I'm back at it with another video for you guys, and this one's going to be a quick video, and I promise you it's going to be quick because this is a very broad but specific topic, and I'm going to break it down into various different videos for you guys. So I'm not going to cram everything into this one video because I really want you guys to understand what this is, and you probably already know what this video is going to be about because you've read the title. I know you read it by now, and if you didn't, it is what is zoning, right? What is zoning? So let's dive right into this video and let's get it done quickly. You remember when you're in elementary school and you have terminology for the week and your teachers will have various different tasks with regards to these terms that they gave you? And one of the tasks would be like writing out the terms 10 times each, right? And then the second one was looking up this term and defining it from the dictionary, right? So I always feel I still utilize that. I always feel, now I'm not writing it out 10 times, okay? But I always, if I don't understand what something is, the first thing I do is I look at the dictionary and I look up the definition of it because that's important to me to understand the broad makeup of what something is. So let's first things first is define zoning. According to dictionary.com, especially with relating to city planning or urban planning, right? And it's the division of an area into specific zones. And it's especially restricts the different numbers of building types and the different types of uses for a zone, right? Now that definition, it's okay, but I feel like we can dive deeper into that and I can break it down a little bit more for you guys so it can be more clear as to what zones is, what zoning is, what do you mean by land uses and building types, what does that mean? So that's what we're going to do today. I had to put on my jacket because we're about to leave, but anyways, I wanted to clear up one thing with regards to that definition that was provided by dictionary.com. And the reason why it needs to be cleared up is because of one term that they use, which I think plays into the negative connotation associated with city planning or urban planning, and that term is restrict. The term said something, the division of land and restricting the number of buildings and the types of land uses that are allowed in a zone district, right? That's all fine and dandy, but I feel that that term restriction is just not accurate. Zoning isn't set in place to restrict anything. It's there to provide parameters on how a piece of property or a city is built out over time, right? Everything in life has parameters. You can't just do anything and everything you want. So these parameters that are set in place by zoning helps to promote healthy growth over time, right? Within a city. For instance, let's say you have a piece of property, you have a house on this property, you've been living there for 40 years, you love the view that you get from your house, and then a developer comes in and they want to build the property right in front of your house, and they build a huge skyscraper that is 70 feet tall, and now you no longer have the view of that beautiful view shed of the mountains because we allowed this property owner or developer to build a 70-foot tall building right in front of your house, right? So zoning isn't there to restrict, it's to provide parameters for healthy growth, right, in a city or in a piece of property. So I just wanted to clear that up, but yeah, so there we go. Okay, so zoning isn't there to restrict you of what to do with your property. It is a tool that is used by municipalities to govern pieces of land use types. Land use types meaning like residential, commercial, industrial, business park, or even open space areas, okay? So it's a tool that is used by municipalities. So let's get into knowing different zoning. How do you find out what a piece of property is zoned, right? So that is done by either calling up to the planning division or the planning department, or going into City Hall and going to the planning department and asking a planner to look up a piece of property with an address or an APN. And once you give them the address, they'll look it up and they'll say the property is zoned R16, R2, C2, or something like that, right? And these numbers have, these letters and numbers are associated to a zone type. So for instance, if I say C2, your property is zoned C2, that can be like general commercial or something like that. So that's how you find out what your property is zoned. Okay, so once you find out what a piece of property is zoned, for instance, let's say it's C2 general commercial, what you probably want to know now is, what can I do with this piece of property? I now know the zoning, what is allowed in the zoning district, right? So you're gonna look up the city's zoning ordinance, ordinance meaning a piece of legislation that is adopted by the authority members presiding over your city. And for my city, that is city council. For yours, it may be a board of directors or something like that. They adopted or approved this piece of legislation, which is called the zoning ordinance, and it's a long, lengthy document stating what is allowed and what isn't allowed, what's permitted, what requires conditional use permit for specific zone types. So once you crack open the city zoning ordinance and you flip to C2 general commercial, the first thing that you're going to see is the intent or purpose of this zone district, C2. Oh, it's going to be commercial uses inside of an enclosed building, blah, 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 right? But then right underneath that, the thing that people really, customers or applicants, developers really care about is the permitted uses and uses that require conditions, right? For instance, permitted uses in C2 may be like retail, personal services meaning barbershops, salons, things like that, or plumbing businesses. So these things are outright permitted in this zone district. But then once you go down to uses that require conditions, right? Those are like administrative tasks. So like these are things that can just be looked at by the planning director or something like that. So it may be like a wireless facility is allowed in this zone district, but it has to have a couple conditions attached to it. But this can be approved by the planning director. Then underneath that, there will be conditional use permit required, right? So these uses are a little bit more intensive, and so it's there's conditions that need to be met prior to approval of this use type. So it typically requires you to go through a public hearing process with the planning commission. So things that require a conditional use permit may be like a restaurant, right? A restaurant is typically allowed in C2 general commercial. It's permitted use. However, let's say you have a drive-through attached to your restaurant. Now this use is a little bit more intensive because now it's requiring traffic studies. There's going to be more traffic impacts. So now you have to go through a conditional use permit process. And so those are the three different levels of things that you will see in a zoning district, right? And then there's like performance standards, such as how something should look. Are outdoor displays allowed? Things like that. So those are the types of things that you want to look for in your zone district. Okay, so now that we kind of discussed and broken down what is in a zoning district within the zoning ordinance, one of the other things that is most vital, a lot of people want to know this before all that other stuff, is because they kind of already know what the zone district allows and what it does not allow, what's permitted, what isn't permitted, what requires a conditional use permit. They always want to know the development standards. Development standards meaning the minimum lot size. Can I subdivide this lot into 2 lots? What's the minimum lot size that it has to be in the zone? Oh, it has to be 6,000 square feet. I have 18,000 square foot lot. I can subdivide it and divide it into 3 different parcels, right? The minimum lot depth and the minimum lot width. How big does a piece of property width and lengthwise, what's the size requirements for that? Is it 80 feet by 120? Is it 40 by 300? What's the lot size with regards to depth and length? Then there is the density. How much density is allowed in this zone district? 10 units per acre, something like that. So the other general development standards people are always curious about are things such as height requirements. Am I allowed to only build up to 20 feet, or am I allowed to build up to 120 feet in this zone district? The setbacks, what are the front yard setbacks? Is it 20 feet, so I can't build from the property line, and from the property line 20 feet towards the house, I can't build in that area. Okay, so now that we have a general understanding of what the zoning ordinance is and what a zone district is and what permitted uses means and what conditional use permit means and what development standards are, let's discuss this in the comments down below, okay? If you have specific questions that you don't understand, you went to your city planning department and they told you something, you don't understand what they're talking about, you're like, what? I don't get it. You can put that down in the comments below and I'll answer them, or you can email me at tomboydru, that's DRU, at gmail.com, or go ahead and follow me on Instagram. My Instagram is tomboy_Dru, DRU, and you can hit my DM and ask me any questions that you need. But anyways, let's thumbs up this video, right? And let's subscribe, because I'm going to have more videos coming at you guys talking about what types of things you need to look for with regards to zoning or the general plan land use designation or city planning when you're buying a new piece of property, or when you're eyeing a piece of property. What should you be looking for when it relates to planning, right? Because people always forget about that. They just look at the house and they're like, it's a nice house, but there may be a shed or a guest unit in the back that isn't permitted. So I'm going to help you guys understand some of the things that you need to look out for so you don't have code violations, okay, or zoning violations. So like I said, let's thumbs up this video and let's subscribe, and I'll see you guys in my next video.